where a portion of your sales tax could go to the point of purchase and a portion could stay at your place of residence. Does that begin to start to make sense? And what does that split look like? As you go to bed tonight and you start to think about all the wonderful things that we're talking about, some of you are going to toss and turn because you're going to think, oh, it sounds like, she didn't say it, but it sounds like that's going to take more money. I grew up in corporate healthcare. We find ways to make ends meet and keep the bottom line profitable even when the demands become greater. You look at how those resources are allocated, and kind of one of the preeminent principles of conservative government is that which governs least governs best. Everybody's heard that? And you want to keep your resources closest to where the service is being provided. None of us like sending money to Washington, D.C. and then waiting them to tell us how to pave our roads with our money. We want that money to stay local. Well, if we believe that, how come 6 cents of sales tax goes to Austin and 2 cents stays here? If the underlying principle is that government ought to be local, are there things that Austin is doing that you ought to be doing locally? Not that we increase the tax, but that we leave the money here rather than sending 6 cents to Austin. Do we begin to shift that back by going 6 and 2, 5 and 3, 4 and 4, 3 and 5? There are ways that you think about what you do in your business, and people in government will say, well, government isn't a business, and I said, well, maybe it ought to look a little bit more like one, and it could deliver service competitively, transparently, efficiently, and with excellence, none of which we have in state government today. Private property ownership and gun ownership, essential elements of freedom. Get rid of property tax and taxes and enjoy the prosperity that will come with that. Harness the abuse of eminent domain and recognize, I didn't put this together probably until about 6 weeks ago, that all of this time talking about private property and also trying to figure out, and some of you in this audience pressed me real hard on immigration reform and securing our border, and Deborah, what are we going to do? And we've got to do something, and I worked on that for months. But you know, only in the last, I'd say 6 or 8 weeks have I tied private property and immigration together. See, that's private property on that border. Most of that property is private property. If you had people combing through your home and through your backyard at the rate that those guys have people criminally trespassing on their property, you would be up in arms. You would be demanding that the state do something about it. We've got sparsely populated rural counties, county sheriff's departments, county law enforcement does not have the resources to secure that property. It is a private property issue down there as much or more than it is any other sort of issue. And for private property, you bet the state has a role to play there. It's not just a secure the federal border issue, and Washington ought to be doing it, and we can sit here twiddling our thumbs waiting for them to do our job. It is protect the citizens of the state of Texas. That is their property. That property needs to be secured. I don't think that we can appreciate the benefit to our state when we start to truly secure and respect private property. We're talking about some of the economic gains that we can enjoy when we eliminate property tax, but our neglect of and disrespect for has led to a decay in so many areas. We're not paying attention to the law. We're not creating laws that cause fair and just treatment to all players. We've got special interests, and they get special privileges to do things to your land that your neighbor or some small business in your community could never do. We have so neglected the first principles of a constitutional republic that if we would just but do those few things, we would enjoy freedom and prosperity that we've almost given up hope for. I talk often about a conversation that I had with a man in Austin, Texas. His name is Gabriel Bruzon. Mr. Bruzon is the editor of El Mundo newspaper. It is a Spanish-language weekly paper. Noe and I grew up in South Texas. I say there were lots of Garcias, Gonzalez's, Pettis's, a few Medinas. I had never met anyone whose last name was Bruzon, and I was curious about the origin of that name. He told me he was Cuban. And then I got really curious because I didn't think anybody ever got out of Cuba. And this guy was in his early 30s, and I wondered how he had gotten here, and I asked him about that. He said he is Christian, and he served as a missionary in Ecuador, and from Ecuador he immigrated here to the United States 3 years ago. He is the publisher for that newspaper in Austin. And I have often thought in this quest for finding better questions to be asking candidates, and in restoring a constitutional republic and getting us back, that we think in America when the fascist or the Marxist or the communist comes, that they'll come with purple spots or something, and we'll recognize them when they take the podium. We'll know that's a communist or that's a fascist. And here sits this guy who had spent family for 4 generations in communist dictatorship Cuba. So I said to him, Mr. Bruzon, if I had taken a picture of you standing on the street in communist dictatorship Cuba, and I took a picture of you today standing on the street in Constitutional Republic, Austin, Texas, what's the difference? I think we think they'll look different. They look just like us. What's the difference between that guy in Cuba and that man in Austin? And he said the man in Cuba had no dreams. Everything was free. Healthcare was free, education was free, but we had no dreams. We couldn't plan where we would live, where we would work, or where we would travel. We had no dreams. I think we're going to be amazed as a state when we start to draw from the wisdom of the minds of men about those first principles of what it is that protects freedom. We're going to be amazed at the sort of dreams that we start to dream again in Texas. That's our opportunity. That's our opportunity. And 13 months ago, you would have all said, yeah, good luck with that. But you're not saying that anymore, and neither is the rest of the country. We're that close to winning this race. If you have not already voted, please do that tomorrow. If you have any time between now and March 2nd that you can stand outside of an early voting polling location, that gives you 4 more days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Thank God. 4 days. Stand outside of a polling place with a Medina sticker or t-shirt and thank people who are coming to vote and tell them that you would really appreciate them voting in the Republican primary Debra Medina for governor. You'd be amazed at the impact that that has on an election. It's a shame, but it's reality.
Not within 100 feet though.
No, right. You got to be 100 feet from the door. Be 100 feet away from the door. And there's supposed to be signs out there that say, no electioneering. That's a fancy term for don't talk to anybody inside of that 100 feet. You can talk to them beyond the 100 feet marker. Thank them for coming out to vote. Ask them to vote Medina for governor. The other thing that you could do that would be very helpful, in fact, probably most helpful, is something that political activists call GOTV, or Get Out the Vote. Make a list of people that you know that are going to support your candidate. And then you and or a friend take your list down to the courthouse and look at the list of people who have already voted. It'll be your opportunity to play Santa Claus in February. Check the list twice. If they have not yet voted, get on the phone and call them. I don't care how many times you bump into them in the grocery store and they tell you they've already voted. I don't care how many times you